Hi, this is Susan Walsh from hookingupsmart.com, and I want to speak with you today about some thoughts I have regarding the question of who should pay on dates. So, I was catching up recently with an old friend of mine, meaning I've known her a long time. She's only 25. And she was describing to me the contrast in a situation she's had over the last few years with online dating. Specifically, when she got out of college, she signed up for OkCupid and went on some dates and actually wound up dating someone for a long time, for a couple of years, that she met that way. And she said across the board, even though when the check came, she would do that kind of fake, putting the hand toward the wallet gesture, every guy that she had gone out with had said, don't do that. This is on me. I insist I want to pay. So recently she got out of this long-term relationship and reactivated her OkCupid account and, got a lot of upfront interest. She's a very attractive young woman. And so she went on 10 first dates. And this time around, her experience was very different. So she did the feint, the fake out hand move, as always. This time, 8 guys sat there and nodded and said, "Thank you. That'll be great. We'll split the check." When she was kind of baffled and surprised by that. One guy straight up refused. He insisted on paying, in the traditional manner, and she was very appreciative of that. And one guy actually texted her shortly before the date to remind her that the venue that they had selected was cash only. So she asked my advice, and so let's get the douchey guy out of the way immediately. So my first piece of advice is obviously to disqualify the guy who texted that the venue was cash only. I want to talk to you about this question of who pays because it's something that I think a lot of young women are really grappling with today. And I think there are two different issues here. One is a fairness issue, and one is a more strategic issue, although they are related. Now, first, let's talk about fairness. And the thing that I want to mention right away is the wage gap. No, not that wage gap. This is the wage gap where women in cities make $1.17 for every dollar that men make. And this is especially pronounced in the younger ages, among people in their 20s. So there's a very good chance that when you go on a first date with a guy that you don't already know, you make more than he does. In fact, the young woman that I know, Steph, has a very lucrative, high status job working in financial services. So the notion that she would expect a man to pay for her drink or her meal isn't really fair. The women's movement provided equality for us, and we've exceeded all of those expectations in the workplace and in higher education. And so it strikes me as hypocritical to expect a man to revert to a traditional role when you probably are making more than he is or have a better shot at getting the promotion than he does. It's just not fair. I also think the whole fake out with the arm thing is really cheesy and dishonest. Guys know exactly what you're doing with that half-hearted, arm lift over to the area of your purse. No. If you're going to chip in, you should do it cheerfully. You should do it because it's the right thing to do and because you're concerned about fairness. So I suggest in those situations that you actually open your bag, take out your wallet. He's free to stop you at any point, but don't you hesitate. And you take out your wallet and he says, "No, I've got this." And you say, "I'm happy to split this," or "I'm happy to share this." Make that offer. It's only fair. He still insists no, as I think a lot of guys will. Then it's your job, assuming that you want to see him again, to reciprocate. Or maybe you take him for ice cream afterwards, or you cook him a meal at some point soon. But the idea that men should be fulfilling a chivalrous role today isn't fair to men, and it doesn't make any sense. So that's the fairness question. But there's also a strategic question that suggests that it's really in your best interest to sincerely offer to pay and, in fact, to pay. There was a recent study that came out of UCLA talking to 17,000 participants who took a survey, and they found some really, really interesting things. The first thing they found is that 2/3 of women reported that they offered to pay. But 1/3 hope that the man will say no way. So they offer, but it's a half-hearted offer. They don't really want the man to accept the money. And in fact, he'll probably be penalized in some way if he does accept their offer. Half of the women surveyed reported that they were bothered by the idea that the guy would expect them to offer. In other words, they still want that chivalry. They want the guy to be surprised perhaps and say, oh, well, if you insist, we could, share this, or you can get it next time, or whatever. That's okay with most women, but most women don't like the idea that the guy would expect up front for them to pay. Now, again, the guy who texted Steph to say it's cash only, I can understand why she was bothered by that, and I think any woman should be bothered by that. This is a guy who probably thinks that he's going to get sex for the price of an apple teeny, so, why waste your time? When they interviewed men, they found that 2/3 of the men felt strongly that women should contribute in relationships or in dating. They should contribute financially. However, they don't feel that women should pay, half. Most men indicated that they would be really happy if a woman would pay like 1/4 to 1/3 of the expenses. They like the idea of providing for the woman. That makes them feel like a man. It makes them feel that they're more attractive to women when they pay. And so they feel that they benefit in some way from paying, and that's fine. And I think a lot of women would appreciate that. You don't have to even necessarily find yourself splitting the expenses in half, although, again, I think it's fair that you should. Interestingly, that expectation that men want women to pay 1/4 to 1/3 is exactly what women in long-term relationships or married women say they want men to do around housework. Almost half of the men said that they would stop dating a woman who never offered to pay. Now, they would make this decision after a few dates, meaning they're not going to call her and explain, I won't be going out with you anymore because you didn't offer to pay. They'll just stop calling. Now, I hear from women all the time, it was going so well, and then boom, he stopped calling. We went out on 4 dates. We were having such a great time, and I never heard from him again. Well, now that we know that half of men would stop dating you if you never offered to pay, I wonder how many of those women who, the guy did a disappearing act, and we all want to say, what a jerk, what a douchebag. Maybe those women never offered to pay, and the guy was offended, justifiably, and felt taken advantage of. So it's in your best interest to share that burden. One other piece of information that I think is really interesting, there's a Harvard Business School professor named Michael Norton, and he has recently come out with a book called Happy Money. And what he has found in his research is that couples who pool their money, all their money, are the happiest couples. And that, in fact, happiness in a relationship degrades the greater the extent that one or both parties hold out part of their income for their personal use. Now, he says a person can hold out up to 5% of your income, your net income, for discretionary spending, to treat yourself or whatever. 5%, that has no harmful effect on relationships. But once you start holding out more than that, then the quality of relationships tends to go down. Now, it's not clear whether people with bad relationships keep their money separate because there's trust lacking, or whether people who want to keep their money separate are generally people who don't trust very easily to begin with. This isn't causation, this is correlation here. So it's not really clear which way this moves, but certainly in my experience, I have found that by far the most harmonious thing to do and the easiest thing to do is to pool your resources. Obviously, your individual results will vary depending on your careers and your incomes and so forth. But I did want to address the fairness issue, and also, perhaps as importantly, the strategic one. I think your chances of getting to the committed relationship are better when you share the expenses, and your chances of making a relationship last are better when you share the expenses. And it really is the right thing to do. So I hope you'll take that into account. Thanks.